O365
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the O365 App Show. My name is Vesa, and we're here at the Microsoft Build Conference in San Francisco. This week, we saw a lot of new updates about Windows 10. We saw Microsoft HoloLens. We saw the ability to put 32-bit applications into the Windows Store. All cool things, but there was one thing which was just amazingly cool. The new Office 365 Unified API. This new single endpoint for developers will allow them to read and write data directly into Office 365 and have a very secure way of getting access to emails, contacts, calendars, in the future also tasks, social activity. Basically everything that at the end will be in Office 365, and of course Microsoft will do updates in the future, is going to be available through this single endpoint. This is just going to be very, very powerful because it will be much easier for developers to build very powerful and smart applications that will help us eventually to overcome information overload. Most media this week wrote about how an innovative company Microsoft still is, showing off this HoloLens and all the capabilities that it will have. I'm pretty sure that the HoloLens will have great productivity solutions in the future to help us manage data and find new ways into interacting with information. But it's going to take some time. And for that reason, in my opinion, the new Office 365 Unified API and the Office Graph API are much better examples about how innovative Microsoft really is. The capabilities that these APIs have will result in very powerful applications from Microsoft, but also from third parties, that are going to have much more impact on the daily lives of information workers. Next week, we're at the Microsoft Ignite conference in Chicago, and here we're going to dig a little bit deeper inside of the opportunities and capabilities and future possibilities that these APIs will have, and the impact that it will have on the applications that we can build. We're going to do many interviews with MVPs, with Microsoft employees, and ask them, of course, about their favorite apps and favorite productivity use cases. But we're also going to ask them about what they see for the near future. Next up is an interview that I recorded earlier with Vesa Juvonen. We're going to talk about the Office 365 Best Practices Group and what they do. For now, I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon.
My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a senior program manager in Office 365 engineering. I'm actually sitting in Finland, in Helsinki quite often, but then my managers and the team are actually sitting in Redmond, so I'm part of the engineering group. And I run programs like the patterns and practices for Office 365 and some other internal programs related on app model. So for me, really kind of the core of SharePoint is the site provisioning. And really, I've been let's say, in quotes, a master in the ONNET XML side since the dawn of the feature framework. And for me, it's always been increasing the productivity of the content editors or the site editors. So creating sites which already have the enterprise branding, enterprise settings, content types, and lists and libraries ready, so that the end users can actually start on actually utilizing the sites. Out of the box, SharePoint is pretty boring, and quite often the enterprise customers want to have more structural format and structural information architecture there by default when they start using the sites. So it's about automation of site provisioning is definitely the really, really close thing to my heart.
Do you see a future where we can just press a button and auto provision any aspects of the SharePoint architecture?
Absolutely, yes. And what we're targeting is not only SharePoint, especially with Office 365. It's also provisioning other stuff in the future. But right now, the SharePoint, absolutely. And actually, to be honest, in April release of the patterns and practices, we're getting pretty close. So there will be a remote XML-based configuration to provision sites based on predefined XML. It's kind of a remote .NET XML. But it's then you can use PowerShell or console application or whatever provider hosted application to provision standardized sites, which is pretty cool stuff. Well, that has been one of the discussion points in the interweb or internet for a while is how do we manage the branding? And somebody said that branding is no longer, custom branding is no longer supported in Office 365, which was not actually true. Nobody said that. We just said that think about how do you manage the branding. Right now, the product group is looking into a new age way of handling the branding in the longer run, but that's pretty far away. So right now we need to still adjust the existing models with the Seattle.master and Oslo.master. And with the patterns and practices, we're just trying to evolve or bring more knowledge about how do you manage your branding in an efficient way that you understand what's going to happen with whatever route you actually chose. You can still use a custom master page. That's absolutely fine and absolutely supported. I mean, nobody said that would not be supported. But what we want to do is educate people. So if you chose a path number 1, what will that bring to you when path number 2? So that people actually understand the impact of the chosen path. Nothing more than that. Typically, in the old school way, if you think about managing of the branding, people used to say that absolutely create a custom master page. But now within the cloud, we release a new version every single bi-weekly basis. So we need to make sure that those releases, what we do, which we unfortunately don't control really well in the engineering side, that's kind of our fault as well, doesn't impact the end user. And therefore, we're saying that, well, maybe the custom master page isn't the best thing to do, because that might cause some maintenance challenges. But again, it's debatable, and these things are never black and white. It's never black and white with SharePoint, and it was never black and white in SharePoint even in on-premises. So.
Yeah. I really did like the slide that you presented during the SharePoint Saturday in Helsinki, where you have these 4 options, and I will put the slide on the video if I'm gonna edit this interview. But it was I made a screenshot of it and put it on Twitter, and it got a lot of retweets. So people also liked it to see this distinction of options that you have to do branding, which I think it's a good. It's not black and white, but there are 4 options, and basically it says you can choose, and all have their pros and cons basically. And I think that's a very good summary on where we are at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, in the longer run, we're absolutely trying to fix that. The challenge of let's say, breaking the branding or breaking the sites to the ongoing updates. We want to adjust that. Well, we're not looking into breaking stuff intentionally at all, but still we're trying to adjust that to be more long-term safe. Right now, we have to, however, remember that right now we need to also have guidance, and that's what those slides are all about. They're trying to educate the field on the chosen path, nothing more than that. Okay,
cool. So site provisioning and then automating deployment of sites, I think that's a very interesting area, and I can imagine a lot of good things coming out in the future, where enterprise customers can leverage these abilities from the API to do great stuff and do automation and basically give more control to end users in auto-creating project sites or other use cases where they can have much more self-service capabilities in getting the best out of SharePoint.
True, and that's also the thinking with the PNP guidance. So we're gonna release a patterns and practices provisioning framework as part of the April release, which happens on the 2nd of April. Actually, has already happened when this video will go out. But as part of that one, the thinking is that we want to concentrate on that scenario that you used to use on a XML. You used to create a web template. You used to have a standardized customized template. How can we do that within the cloud in the standardized way and really bring a value for the customers? And then show a different use cases, and the engine will be really flexible. So you can actually plug it in using multiple different ways, like that PowerShell or console application or provider hosted application platform. So it looks really, really solid. We're really happy about the design.
365.
you spoke about the patterns and practices core team. Can you give us a very short summary on what the goals are for the team and what's the core foundation of this initiative?
Yeah, so it's a really long story if we would start from the birth of the patterns and practices. But at some point, somebody just said that let's rename the whole story as patterns and practices, and that wasn't actually even our idea. That was a marketing decision, to be fully honest. I'm a developer. Majority of my time I actually use with the customers and writing customer code. But then from those customer engagements, we actually learned a lot of new learnings and a lot of new code, which would be useful for other people. So we wanted to bring or create a stage or a process how other people from the community can benefit. Because for me, it really doesn't make any sense that I need to always rewrite and reshare the same stuff for multiple people. Rather, let's create a process and a program how we can push those examples what we do and code what we do for the other people as well, so that the community can build between the knowledge of other people in the community. And the core team is more about, let's say, coordinating that work. We absolutely want everybody from the community to help us. The core team is just a trusted group of people who are the ones who then can manage the repo, the GitHub repo. And core team happens to be also the really active people who are contributing as well. But the ultimate goal of the BNB is actually that Microsoft can sit back and we can actually move away, and the community will thrive, the whole patterns and practices team and the patterns and practices program. Learn by sharing and really sharing the knowledge between the other people in the community.
Mm-hmm. Then in the past, there always have been discussions about sample code and in what way it would be really reusable in building enterprise apps. So sure. Is there, from the team, is there an opinion about the enterprise grade that might be already in the code, or should developers always need to refactor to put it in their own applications? What is the idea about that?
So that's a fair comment. In the Office 365 developer patterns and practices, we wanted to take a slightly different route. So this is not about patterns and practices like the enterprise library. This was more about nobody from the field actually knew how to do app model stuff when we started. Well, not that many knew. So we wanted to first concentrate on simple samples. We wanted to show patterns. We wanted to show and concentrate really on small pieces which will how to do X and Y and Z. And that's the reason why there's a significant amount of simple samples, and we've been criticized about those examples as well, because they're so simple and not necessarily optimized for code. But that the idea was more about showing that you can do, enabling the field. And right now we want to concentrate more and more then on the high quality deliveries, and that's where we have, let's say, solutions. So if you go to the repository in the GitHub, we have sample section, we have a scenario section, and we have a solutions. And the solutions are meant to be more, let's say, enterprise ready. In some sense, all of these are still samples. We don't want to actually build something which is a product. We want people to take an ownership of that code, what they actually take from the GitHub. Not to say that, well, this will be on the responsibility of patterns and practices team, because then there would be legal implications, and we cannot actually do that.
Makes sense.
But really, we wanna increase the quality. There's the core component, which has already more than 200 unit tests, which are all green. And the quality is getting better, but we need to definitely also be more proactive on explaining what we have. Quite often people think PNP as a set of samples. There's actually much more than that.
Yeah. I have one final question, and that's what are you guys seeing for the future? What kind of dots did you put on the horizon? And what are you aiming at?
That is a good question. So the number one things what we had on our radar for a long time was a remote provisioning framework, which we already released in the March 2015, and now the site provisioning was the really big thing. It's been in our to-do map for a long time. The following things are slightly, I would say, unclear, but what we want to do is that we want to concentrate more on the documentation, education, and guidance. And we want to kind of break the MSDN thinking. The MSDN is more about bits and pieces. You can do A or B or C, but we don't explain what is actually the right thing to do in MSDN. We don't quite often say, choose a path A because of. And that's what we want to do with the PMP guidance. We want to bring and educate the field to think about the options, not to say just black and white, that what is right or wrong, rather educate on thinking the individual options. And that's definitely the area where we will be putting our bets in the future. Now that the site provisioning seems to be, well, it's not never done, but it's the engine is there. Now that everybody can start building on that.
Mm-hmm. So basically the code will be more like given to the community and people can start expanding this code base?
Absolutely, yes. And hopefully people will start expanding and helping us on expanding the code base rather than submitting new examples, because it's rather let's increase the quality of existing ones and the documentation of existing ones rather than resubmitting almost the same stuff all the time, which we don't have that much yet, but it's really, there are active people as well. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to give a shout out to everybody to keep on improving the stuff that's in there. And to make a summary of what you just said, the team will be more focusing on providing guidance and tell about all the different approaches that you might have in building particular solutions. Right?
True. And that's definitely, and one area what we will absolutely concentrate also, I almost forgot about that one. So we want to start expanding outside of the SharePoint. So the Office 365 developer patterns and practices, it's not actually SharePoint patterns and practices, it's Office 365 patterns and practices. And that includes Office 365 APIs. So that's definitely in our radar. But at the same time, before the field can actually adopt Office 365 APIs, we need to teach them what is the NAV model. Because they are tightly linked, and we'll release something new in the Ignite, which will make them even more further tightly linked between each other. And it's the SharePoint app model is more of, it's like a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. You want to learn that one, then you can actually move to Office 365 APIs, and then you understand the whole thinking behind. And we need to move step by step. We do have an internal joke in the patterns and practices guidance, so that's done by me and nobody's laughing. But we're using the ENCO OTB method, and ENCO OTB means new kids on the block. It's the step-by-step method, and we want to start with those simple examples. Again, we really want to do stepping stones, and we absolutely acknowledge. I'm an old SharePoint farm solution developer. I actually taught 18 rotation in the master certification program how to do Fortress code, and now suddenly I'm teaching people away from the Fortress code. It is kind of ironic, and it was a horrifying experience when you have to start learning new. But at the same time, the change is speeding up, and the change is increasing all the time, and we are more and more targeting to the cloud. The SharePoint 2016 will have more hybrid scenarios, and yes, will support still Fortress code. But still, we need to think about the future, which is more with the cloud anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the people complaining about that, I don't agree with them, because that's just this decade where we're in. It's all about learning, unlearning, and relearning, and that's just the pace of technology at the moment, and how quick things are shifting. Of course, driven by cloud computing and internet services and APIs. They just require different models and approaches. And then, of course, you will have to unlearn some tricks that you have learned in the past, just because the foresight and the pace in which this exponential technology is maturing. Everybody who is making bad comments about it, wake up. It's change or die. This is the future, right?
We need to, yes, it is the future. And one of the good examples being some of the old school persons might have been around when we moved from VP6 or ASP, active pages, to the .NET. It was horrible experience because what are you doing? Object model, what is this? Because we didn't have a object model in VP6. And the whole field was let's say, against the .NET first, until they understood the flexibility and the power and what you can do with that. And that's really about what Microsoft Azure and Office 365 as well. People don't quite understand necessarily all the options, because we can build more within the cloud rather than in on-premises. If we only think about the SharePoint as such, yes, from an API perspective, the SharePoint API in server-side, that's much more complex, absolutely, and much more open, and there's much more opportunities. But then if we combine that with the overall big picture of the enterprise development, then the cloud has much more significant options and much more significant capabilities. with the Microsoft Azure. So it's an interesting change of thinking. So.
Absolutely. Well, I would like to thank you for this interview and for the time.
Yep, no worries.
It was great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me. So this was fun.